Well, here we are.
Here we bloody are.
Yeah, well, welcome to the first episode of the Say It How It Is podcast.
Can't quite believe that we're sat here.
I know this is a little bit of a
surreal moment.
Yes, exactly.
Sweating, can't I?
Yeah, sweaty palms, knees weak, arms heavy, and all that. But yeah, so today's episode is going to be about meeting us guys as your hosts, and getting to know us a little bit, getting to know the why behind the podcast. So yeah, Fion's just looking at me. I need you to speak now.
Well, I was just listening to what you had to say, Gwen.
Oh, yeah. Isn't this going to work well? Okay. Right, we need something to kick this off, otherwise we're going to be sat here.
Oh,
well, I think the first bit was all right.
Yeah, no, it's just the start, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Right, well...
So, yeah, well, it's called Say It How It Is for a reason, if you want to start that off.
Yeah, so say it how it is, the name of the podcast. How did you come to that conclusion on the name for the podcast, Ffion?
Well, people that do know me quite well.
Very lucky people.
Well, no, I'm very, very honest. Yeah, pretty much like, Marmite, you either love it or you hate it.
Yeah, very literal.
Yeah, I'm very savage. So yeah, that's why I was like, well, it's a term I use quite often. I always say to people, well, just say it how it is, man. So I was thinking, well, what better way to name a podcast with topics that, we want to discuss? Just say it how it is.
Exactly.
And
what actually made you want to start a podcast?
Very good question, actually, Gwen. So basically, yeah, brief overview, which I'm sure we'll get into later, but I done my ACL in the end of Six Nations against Italy, complete ACL rupture, 3 tears in my meniscus, compression fracture, you name it, I done it. And I think the way I thought I'd feel after having such a big injury, being a rugby player, I kind of thought, oh my gosh, my life would be over. And I actually had a completely different perspective after it actually happened. And then shortly after that, I did another surgery to find out that I got diagnosed with endometriosis. So those two combined, yeah, was quite mentally challenging. And I spoke out about my endo diagnosis, and the response I had was massive. It really was quite overwhelming because I felt quite anxious about sharing something so vulnerable. But the amount of women that messaged me explaining about their own experiences or things they're struggling with, they've been fighting for years to try and get a diagnosis, or even like mothers with children that said that that's what they're going through, or women at the age of 40 explaining about their fertility issues because of the disease. It was really quite, I say overwhelming, but really made me realise how powerful that could be. I was so worried to speak out about what I was going through and sharing that information, but I didn't realise the impact it could have on so many different people. And just by doing that, the amount of people that have messaged me, even like close friends that have gone to get seen now, and actually been diagnosed, really made me think that that's just one topic and one issue in this scary, crazy world. Like, what more can we speak about and discuss with other people that can do such help for others? So that kind of was an idea, and where I started thinking about it, like, okay, speaking out about it, the response I had, this could be something really powerful, where can I go with it? And that's what started the idea then, to be like, all right, what about a podcast? What about getting people on and sitting with people that are like me in that sense, but I've gone through something, something quite traumatic or something life-changing, and how can that story help other people? And I was thinking, okay, I had the idea of a podcast. Who can I do it with? I think obviously I thought, like, of course I could have done it by myself, but I think it's really important to have that different perspective with somebody else. Just having those open and difficult conversations, and doing that with someone that either has similar experiences or different, or has different view on different things, I think is really important. So that was a question for me to think, who can I do it with? And then lo and behold, enter Gwen Crab.
And she thought, who's really good at talking? Me. Yeah, so just going back to touch on some of the stuff that you just covered, what I find really interesting is like how you said about how you were quite anxious and worried about sharing your story because potentially you thought maybe that other people didn't go through a similar thing or that have similar experiences within that, like that field of endo, for example. But like sharing, I think it's almost like flipped your perspective on it a little bit in terms of like you've now seen the impact that your honesty has had on other people in the same position as you. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
No, yeah, massively. Like, I can literally remember being sat on the sofa. One of the girls was with me, and I was like staring at the Instagram post, and I was so scared to post it. And I sat on that post for an hour, and I was like gonna post it, and I kept putting it off.
Can I ask why? What was it? Do you think that made you so scared?
I was so anxious about, like, I don't know. I was anxious about people thinking, "Oh, shut up!" Like, I was anxious about people thinking like, I didn't realize it was a big issue.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. I've struggled for so long with my periods, and which again we'll delve into the people that maybe don't understand what endometriosis is, but it's basically a condition that lining of the womb that grows like outside of that, and what I struggled with was bad periods, fatigue, and then being an athlete, it made my life 10 times harder. But I think I've protected that because I didn't want to be deemed as weak. I didn't want to be like, I'm in a team sport. I didn't want to be like making excuses for certain things. Oh, she can't do fitness today because she's just moaning. She's got a bad belly. Like, so I think all of those things were like playing on my head, and I was worried about the response. I was worried about what people's reaction would be. I think it's because I didn't understand until I shared it how big of an issue it was.
And how many people it actually affects.
100%. And like, and that was the eye-opening thing. And as soon as I'd done it, it was like it was like a weight off my shoulders, because then I was like, oh my god, like, obviously it reassured me that I did the right thing, but I was so glad because so many people reached out to me. But before then, I didn't have a clue that like all those people suffered. Like, I didn't even, like, a few months before, I didn't even know what endometriosis was.
Yeah.
And now I've learned like how many women suffer with it. It's actually crazy. Yeah, I took a few days to really, like, especially after my surgery, like once I officially got diagnosed, and like it took me a few days to really like process it all, because it was quite overwhelming, because I'd gone from like one emotion towards it, being anxious and being worried, and then the complete opposite by thinking like, why was I so scared?
And like,
what was I worried about?
Empowered.
Yeah. And I kind of felt like a sense of responsibility then. I kind of felt like, right, I've done this now, and people are really connecting with me, and like, I got to keep this going. Like, I need to, if someone needs to be the change in this, and like I say, like, even if I help just one person, and that's good enough for me. But if you've got the opportunity to change one person's life, then why wouldn't you do it? So yeah, just really then transpired my brain to be like, this needs to be bigger than just this topic. And I think this is then where this podcast stemmed to be like, there's so many different topics, taboo subjects that need to be spoken about, and if this is the way that we can connect and help people by getting people of like different sporting experience or backgrounds or higher profile people, to really show that we suffer from these things too, and how can we help your everyday person, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, that's why, stemming onto the point of why I asked you to co-host this podcast with me. Yeah, a bit of background on Gwen. I'm sure you'll explain yourself. I'm going to explain for you anyway. Gwen also had a similar injury to me. Done your ACL as well, didn't you? And we've been attached to the hip throughout these last few months, going through our rehab together, because we're both fortunate enough to be professional rugby players. So yeah, spent a lot of time together. When I've been crying in the gym because I'm so sad about certain things, Gwen was always there to pick me up.
Hold her hand when she's doing hamstring exercises.
And I'd always get a text of Gwen after really, really tough days, to remind me that that I'm strong enough to get through certain things, and how amazing I am. And yeah, that's why I really, really respect her and really value her opinion and her mindset of how she's got through So I'm going to start crying now.
I'm going to start crying as well. Bloody hell.
This is a disclaimer, because we're being honest, I'm very due on my period.
Emotions are good.
My emotions are high anyway. But no, like, you are an amazing person, and I couldn't think of someone better to do this podcast with. We are very aligned with our values and where we want to go in life. So I can't think of a better person to do the show with me.
Bloody hell, how do I follow up from that?
Well, just explain, I think.
Okay.
Explain of, like...
Take it back. Take it back now, y'all.
Obviously, I mentioned that, you know, you've come in through your ACL. Obviously, just give a bit of background on that, because obviously, for people that don't know, you experienced a really difficult injury before that as well. Like, how hard was that for you to, you know, go back to back with those two injuries?
Yeah, so we'll start from the beginning, basically. So last December, so December 2022, I suffered an ankle injury. An ankle injury, I should say, if we're talking about correct grammar, where I snapped my fibula and displaced my foot. And at the time, I had no idea the significance of the injury, really, because I'd had ankle ligament injuries before, so I was like, oh, it's just one of them again, kind of thing. I was on gas and air, that kind of vibe, you know, you're fine. And we went to A&E, and they x-rayed me, and I was just like, right, happy days, get the x-ray, it's not broken, leave. And then the lady came back, it's like 10:30 at night, and she was like, you're going to want to get into a wheelchair. And I was like, well, I'm not going home. And she was like, come with me. And then we went into the results room, and she was like, so you've broken your fibula. And she showed me the x-ray, and I was like, oh, that's broken.
That's not good.
That's not good.
It's not meant to be there.
My foot was like out of place as well.
Oh God.
And then she was like, yeah, so it all happened very quick, but she was like, yeah, we're going to need to put this back in now. And I was like, right, yo. So long story short, they didn't put back in place the right way. So then they were like, you need to go to the big hospital, etc., etc. I ended up having surgery on it. And it was like something that needed to be done instantly. So that all happened very quickly. And then I just remember, like, post-surgery, I'm like, I've just had surgery on my foot. Like, it was such a whirlwind. Things started to settle in then when I was, like, back at home in a lot of pain. I was like, okay, I was in a bit of a bad way, like, losing my independence overnight. Like, it wasn't fun. And then over the next couple of weeks after that, I sort of bounced out of that little bit of a hole I was in, changed my perspective and mindset towards it. I was like, okay, this is happening to me. I've got an opportunity now to try and grow and come back stronger as an athlete.
You were very positive, to be fair. You were very positive coming back from that.
It was weird because I'm not really quite sure how it happened, because before that, I can, like, recall many times, for example, last pre-season, where I was like, oh, I'm aching, I'm sore, this is a bit crap. Like, but something just flipped where I was like, right, the more I see this as crap, the crapper it's going to be. So I was like, okay, let's just get on with this. And I think I had the Six Nations to focus on as a comeback point. So that was always looking at that date. Everything was counting down to the date of coming back. And it allowed me to see quick progression through my rehab. I think also in terms of a bit of perspective, I was around a couple of girls that were coming back from ACL injuries. So you almost feel grateful that you're not going through that, because that's a longer injury.
How long was it from when you had your surgery to when the Six Nations date was?
It was about 14 weeks, I think. So when we looked at timeframes originally, that was way out of sight, because I got put in a cast, and then they said that was for 6 weeks. Then there was going to be 6 weeks in a boot, but we went into a specialist, and because of the environment that I was in terms of professionalism and that kind of stuff, everything got shortened down, and all of a sudden within 6 weeks I was walking again. So I was very fortunate in that sense. So again, more things for me to be positive about. I was like, oh, this is way better than I thought. And then, yeah, so the week leading into that first Six Nations game, I felt ready, physically anyway. Mentally was a little bit of a different story. I was still a little bit in my own head about getting re-injured. Every time I went into like the same scenario of how I did my ankle, I was worried that it was going to go again. Spoke to our sports psych, Dale, who is an absolute saviour to the both of us. And yeah, sort of got over that, good to go. A lot of hype around like return to playing and stuff like that. I think I allowed myself to get a little bit too caught up in that, and then got selected to start that game. Came out into the field buzzing, probably the most excited I've ever been for a game in my life. And And for the first 6 minutes, that was great because it don't. But yeah, like, you know, I was buzzing around the place, like I was enjoying myself, and then unfortunately I just came out of the line too hard. I basically, my foot planted the wrong way for like a change of direction
I'm pulling a
scenario.
face for all of you that can't see my face right now.
And a player stepped back inside me and my knee went. And I actually did my other ACL 6 years ago. So I know exactly what doing an ACL feels like. So as soon as I did it, I knew instantly it was my ACL. And that was really hard in that exact moment to get your head around, because sometimes you do an injury and you almost try not to think the worst because you don't know, but I knew, like I knew. So I was just saying to the physios, like, I can't do this again, I can't do this again. Like instantly I went into a state of panic. All I'm thinking is I could be out for up to a year.
I can remember your dad was in the crowd and we sent him down to go and go and see you.
It was,
and he was like, "She don't want to see me."
no, and I didn't. He was right. But yeah, I was just going, no, like this can't be happening. And they were trying to keep me calm, but I was like, no, like I can't. I don't know how to explain it, but it was weird. And then eventually came off the pitch. I was like, do not put me on a stretcher. So they let me walk off.
Our physio Joe was saying to me actually yesterday. She was like, "I remember telling Gwen, stop crying. They're filming you. Stop crying."
And I was like, I don't care. Yeah, little did I know, 3 days later, when a media release went out for it, it was the most horrific picture I have ever seen of me in my entire life. It was awful, but I was like, it's fine. There's bigger fish to fry here. And yeah, so went into the physio room, like the medical room, and I was just in bits. Like I just couldn't quite get my head around it, and that kind of continued for about a week after I did it. I was in this really weird stage of like denial, but then it was like going through a breakup. Like it was like I'd broken up with my rugby career. That's what it felt like.
I think it's probably because you obviously had that ankle injury beforehand and you built yourself up to return, and then, you know, you sustained another injury, which unfortunately is quite a long, if obviously longer than what your ankle was. How did you think then? How did you create like your mind to be as strong as it is now? Because obviously if you're in that dark place, like how did you get out of that? Like what made you change and like switch that mindset to be like, okay, like what can I do with this, if that makes sense?
A lot of it, I think, I've always been a big podcast listener. I enjoy reading, and I like learning things from what I listen to or from what I read. And the kind of books that I was reading and the podcasts I was listening to were very much around mindset and how you can sort of flip your perspective on things to actually create a life that's better. And you know, a lot of the time these books come from people who are not in sporting scenarios, so they're just talking about in terms of life. But I was trying to think down the roots of injury and how, and it was weird because after that week or so where I was in a bit of a bad way and like just spontaneously crying, like it was like weird. I started to like come out of it a bit and just see it for what it was. And essentially, the facts were I had unfortunately had an injury that was straight after another injury. If that injury had been in a year's time, it would have been unfortunate, but it would have been less unfortunate. It just was the timing that made it seem so bad. And I was having people saying to me like, I just can't believe it, you poor thing, you must be distraught. And like that wasn't helpful for me because I was actually I've got my head around it. So
to be fair, that's what I found as well. Like people were saying to me, "Oh, time must be going so slow," or "Oh, I'm so sorry, you must be gutted." And I was like, well, yeah, of course I'm gutted, but like how I thought I'd feel and then how I actually felt were like completely different. Because I kind of felt like, well, it's happened now. Like it is what it is. Like I can't control it. Can't like magically fix it. And I think how I tried to view it, I don't know if it's similar for you, was like, okay, all I can control is how I react and respond to it. I could, you know, delve myself into this self-pity and feel sorry for myself and hate the world and blame, play the victim, be angry. The only person that's going to affect is me. So, like, I was like, well, it's a long damn time. And with an ACL, for people that don't know, you couldn't be up to nearly out for a year.
9 to 12 months, is it? Yeah.
So, like, it's a long time. So, it's a long time to be angry and feel, you know, it's a lot of time to waste. So, I kind of thought to myself, right, I need to just get on with it. Like, okay, what can I use this time for? Like, becoming a better athlete, becoming a better person. I thought, you know, spend more time at home with the dog. It's the sole center of my life. Like, just using the time, like trying to flip it and be okay, what can I do? Like, and that really completely flipped. And I was like, that is actually
It's
really
game
powerful.
changing. It's
Yeah, I'm
absolutely game
actually
changing.
fine.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I found difficult with, which you know, was when I went back to training like 2 weeks post-op, and the only thing I found hard was the lack of independence I had, because the injury I had, I was on crutches for nearly 2 months. So that was so hard. Couldn't do anything myself. Like, I'm just sitting in a room full of people in the gym, and I still felt so lonely because I was like, I just feel so helpless. Other than that, from like the mindset thing of actually the injury itself and the time I was out for, I was like, well, it is what it is.
Yeah. And
Can't do anything about it.
coming back to what you said about like, what can I do? That is like a literal mindset shift, and it's a lens that you can choose to see things in. And I think it's not a case of trying to sit there, okay, I need to be positive today. It just becomes like a bit of a way of life, I suppose. Like I now don't look at things and like, what opportunities or positives can I see in this? I just view it that way.
Yeah.
And I think weirdly my ankle was like a good warm up for my knee, because and it's
prepping you like,
yeah,
here
well,
you come, Gwen.
I'm not going to say everything happens for a reason, because I think it's a bit complex, but like, as far as things go, it's actually, it's weird, right? I have so many thoughts in my brain right now, but it's weird because externally some people might say this, oh, it's one of the worst years of your life.
Yeah.
Like, you poor thing, you have literally been injured the entire time. I've spent 6 minutes this year not injured, but it has been one of the best, if not the best year of my life. And I think that is because of the lessons that it's taught me, has allowed me to start opening my eyes to things outside of rugby. And one thing that injuries can teach you, there's so much more to life than rugby.
Yeah.
We get so caught up because it's our day-to-day life. Like, my best friends, they're all in the same environment as me every single day. Everyone lives and breathes the same thing. But actually, there's so much outside of rugby to enjoy, and having the time, especially like across the summer, like after my op, across the summer, having loads of opportunities to do things I never would have been able to do if I was fully fit, and if I was playing in finals and semi-finals. Not once did I think, gutted, I'm missing the final with Gloucester Hartbury. Like, obviously, in a dream world, I'd be playing. However, I didn't think, oh, this really sucks, because I was like, I'm enjoying myself. I'm enjoying what else is outside of rugby.
Well, I felt exactly the same, to be fair, but I didn't expect to feel like that.
Yeah.
So, like, pre-injury, you know, ACL is like, oh god,
It's literally
so
like
tough.
the
You don't
Voldemort word.
mention, yeah, it
It's
is.
the Voldemort
You don't
word.
say, yeah,
word
literally,
of-
you don't mention that.
Yeah.
Like, but how I actually felt, and like, same for you, like you said, I don't miss it because I'm trying to like
You don't think about it.
I think people forget that, like, you know, people always say like, oh, you live in the dream, you don't work and whatever. I'm like, my job is a 24-hour thing. Like, I plan my
Never
life
switch off.
around how I can perform and be the best athlete for rugby. Like, how I sleep, how I eat, my weekend plans, like, think about how much time I'm on my feet, like, everything revolves around that. I go home, so I think about, because it's all like it's a lifestyle, not just a 9 till 5 job. And I suppose this time made me kind of just relax a bit rather than just living and being uptight and just thinking like, yeah, just scraping it all back and thinking, okay, like, what else do I appreciate? And like I said, you said like you do get so caught up in it.
Yeah. I guess you get into a little bit of state of autopilot. Like you said, everything is, you live and breathe to become a better athlete. And it's not until you have something that completely gives you a hard stop and interrupts your routine that you actually are like, whoa, what am I doing? Like, I need to reevaluate here. What is important to me? What makes me happy? Like, what are my values? Because that's something that I've worked a lot on whilst being injured, is that, like, there was this really weird thing in a podcast where he said, I can't remember who it was, but the host said, imagine there was a group of aliens watching your day-to-day life, and then I want you to write down your values on a sheet, and if you were to give that to the aliens as they watched you, do you think that they would say that those values align to what you're doing? And that gave me I was like, wow, like, is what I'm doing in my day-to-day life what I say are my values? And actually, I think the reality of it is that 95% of the answer would be no, because people are like, yeah, I want to be family orientated, I want to be a good friend and that kind of stuff, but then they spend all of their life working or doing this and that and the other, you know. So it proper shakes you up and makes you be like, wow.
And I definitely think, like you said, like everybody else looking in, like again, what you said about people saying to you, oh, it must have been the worst day of your life. And similar to me, like on the back of 2 surgeries in like a space of a few weeks, everyone's saying to me, oh my gosh, like you've been through so much and da-da-da. I don't look at it like that.
No.
And I don't know why. It's only like actually you being one of them. Like people have to tell me what the last few months have been like for me, and I'm like, oh God, that does sound intense. But it's really strange because I don't look at it like that, and I can't really explain how or why, or like I just hasn't phased me in that sense. I've just kind of like got on with it really.
Well, I guess when it's when these things happen to you, you don't know any different. So you're just going like through your life. You don't actually have a direct comparison life to think, oh, what would life be like without endometriosis, for example, because it's all you've ever that's what you've known. So then sometimes it takes someone who's not going through what you're going through, or even someone like with the ACL stuff, like someone who understands, like to actually stop and say, like, you do realize that you're actually doing a very good job. Because I think as the human race, it's probably one thing that we're the worst at is giving ourselves credit for things. And unfortunately, there are a few people out there who are like the opposite end of the spectrum of that, and like arrogance is a different thing. But I think a lot of people don't give themselves credit where it's due because, well, and you're
Very
literally
bad at that.
very,
Very bad.
very bad. But how important is it then to have
Yeah.
someone or a couple of people, family, friends, whatever, to just say to you, just to let you know, you are actually smashing it.
I
Do you know
think
what I
we're
mean?
just very bad at taking it. Like, you could compliment
Yeah,
me
you
or
just
give
go,
me some good. Honestly, some days, I'd say probably 3 out of the 5 days, or even 4 days I've been training, Gwen will text me afterwards telling me like how much of a great job I did. I'm really bad at just I'm like, oh, okay, but I didn't hit this in my rehab. But I think because being in such a high performance environment, your brain is just drilled to be like that. And I'm like I'm a perfectionist. Gwen always reminds me, right, there's not, you can't find perfection in this and this and that. And it is quite hard, but you do need to be brought back down sometimes. And like, it is like I'm that one to give it. Like the same for you. I'll always try and tell you you've been great and stuff like that. But then
really cute.
I'm terrible at taking it
Yeah,
back.
yeah. But it's just like it is completely different. It's like you can easily compliment a friend or someone else, but as soon as like then all of a sudden your own internal talk is like, oh, you did that wrong. That wasn't good enough. Like it's weird because when you're speaking to a friend, you'd never speak to a friend like that, but you'd speak to yourself like that. But it's just it's one of the unknown mysteries of the world.
But I think that's what's helped us really connect with each other. Like, gosh, I don't know what I would have done if, unfortunately, in a fortunate way, there's a few of us in our team at the moment with ACL injuries. Not that, you don't want people in your team having them.
On anyone, but
like the positive side of it, if that's a weird thing to say, is that like, gosh, we've been each other's support, haven't we? Like, it's really helpful. There's times in the gym, if I use me and you as an example, I'd come in and Gwen would be, upset and emotional at the beginning of the session, and I'd be getting her through it. And then towards the end, roles reverse, and I'm crying.
When we're on,
and
when we're on rep 12 of the 18th block of exercises,
and everyone's like, "Why are you taking so long?" Because I've got 50,000 sets to do. That's why.
We're in a hypertrophy phase.
Move from this bench. I have to sit still.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Yeah. It's an unfortunate injury. It's not an injury you wish upon anyone, but having people who are going through the same thing at the same time, it gives you those people to just look like you. Sometimes you just have to look at each other and you just get it. You're like, I know exactly. I know because I felt like that.
Understanding, isn't it? Like the good and the bad. Like, and especially when you're there to celebrate each other's small wins, which other people wouldn't understand. Like balancing on one leg yesterday, I was like, "This is amazing."
It was actually class. It was like a smile.
And then being there for when we need to pick each other up, and I think that's huge. Not just in, we're giving our example, but I just think daily life, like just being there for people and lifting each other up when they need it.
Kindness is free. That's what people need to remember. Like it literally costs nothing to say to someone, "You're doing a good job," but everyone's so caught up, and it comes back to what I mentioned about it. Like being injured just creates a complete stop in your routine, and you have to think about things, and takes you off that autopilot. But it makes you realize that like you just get so caught up in your own life, and sometimes you need to stop and actually look at the people around you and say to them like, you're doing a good job, because 90% of the time they're not going to know that themselves unless someone like you says it to them, and know that. But then it works vice versa, like it does with us. Like if I need a pickup, Fion's always there, like always. And it's weird because like I could text you or you could text me, and it's what each other needs, but without even knowing it. You know what I mean? Like I'll send
We've
a
come
TikTok.
a long way.
We have send a TikTok, and Fion's like, I needed to see this.
Yeah, that's
And I'm
actually
like,
really true.
yeah.
Yeah, you
And
did
I'm
that
like,
the other day.
Oh, it's as if I knew. It's like telepathy. It's weird.
She just pop up somewhere in the Vale where we train, and I'm like, oh, I need to do that. She's like, I just knew.
Well, it's weird.
So this is actually true. When I was in the gym and I was like, oh, I really need water. I literally can't find water anywhere. And we went to a different part of the Vale, and Gwen just popped up. I've got you a bottle of water. I was like,
I don't know. She already had a bottle.
but in your advice, like, that's exactly what I needed.
But it's just looking out. It's just looking out for each other, and having that understanding of, like, I know how isolating an injury can feel. And coming back to what you mentioned on, you can, when you're injured, you can be in a room full of people, in a gym full of people, but still feel like the loneliest person there, because you're just looking around. You're like, it's almost as if it slows down.
Yeah.
Everything around you slows down, and you're like, these people are just getting on with their lives, and I'm just sat here waiting for someone to pass me a dumbbell.
It felt like a film, right? It just felt like, when the film, it just all keeps moving around, you're just like stuck, and that's how it felt. And I was starting to feel like, oh, you must be getting so annoying, because each day I just be crying, sat in the gym just crying, because I'm like, oh, because in real life I'm really like, I'm a very, like I say at the beginning, I'm a very serious person, very independent. I don't need no man or no woman. I'm independent. So then to take all of that away, and I can't even go and pick up a pathetic dumbbell. Yeah. Oh, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
Oh, like, it was awful.
Yeah,
and I couldn't get used to it. And like, to be fair, what I found hard was that a lot of the time we were training with other people that were injured, but I didn't want to depend on them. They've got their own things to think about. But like, in an injured environment, everyone wants to help each other. I was like, oh, just ask me and I'll help you. I was like, I don't want to, because you've got your own thing to worry about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we should start giving a bit of a background on our lives, give people to get to know us a bit more.
Okay. Gosh, we're going deep.
We are going deep.
All of a sudden, this turned into a therapy session.
Deal, else I could be out of contract now.
I know we will.
Yeah, so like, obviously rugby is a big part of where you are now. Like, when did you start? Where you are now? What's your big plans? Tell us.
Oh, lots of questions. Yeah, so I actually didn't start playing rugby till I was 15. I actually played football from pretty much the age of 3 until I could walk. Like, not until I could walk, from when I could walk. I played football. I was always a mascot with my dad's team. He was a goalkeeper, and I used to like stand behind the goals and be like, "Come on, Dad." And yeah, he took me every week, and then naturally I started playing football then. I became a goalkeeper as well because I wanted to be like him. And yeah, it just clicked. Like, I had a bit of a natural talent for it, I suppose. And like, my dad, we used to go down the park and like train together, and it was that's how we became really close, me and my dad. I was always really sporty growing up. Literally would do every single sport possible. And I just was like the most competitive kid you've ever met. And which was in primary school, you're in a small bubble, that was completely fine. And then I went into, from being like the big fish in the little pond to being the small fish. And honestly, like, it hit me like a ton of bricks going into secondary school, because I was very unapologetically myself, and I always had been, which wasn't an issue in primary school when you're in a school with 200 people. But when you go into a school and there's like 1,000 kids, everyone's got their own opinion, and kids can be very horrible. And I got bullied a fair bit when I was in school for being different, essentially. But I had this weird confidence that even though people would bully me and like take the mick out of me and stuff, I would come home and be like, say to my mum, I just don't understand why they don't like me. And it's weird, right? Because that is literally what I'm like now, and I haven't changed.
Do you think that is why you're like that now? So do you think, like, Gwen is quite open on social media and quite like, you're just very open, aren't you? And do you think that is why you're like that now, where you've got this confidence to be like, I don't care, I think I'm proud of myself, and I'm, do you know what I mean? Do you think that's what's that stem from?
Yeah, definitely. Like, when I was like 12, 13, I literally did what I wanted because I wanted to do it, and I didn't ever think about other people's opinions. And then as I grew up a little bit and I started to change, like, I was quite a chubby kid, so got bullied a lot for that. And then I lost a load of weight when I was about 14, 15. So just before starting rugby. And that's where I started to struggle with like body image, body dysmorphia and that kind of thing. But I thought in my head, I was like, right, well, maybe kids will stop bullying me now because, I look normal, or like I fit in, which was a completely wrong perception to have of myself. But actually the complete opposite happened, and then they started to bully me for being too skinny. And
For
I was like,
goodness sake.
I know, and then cogs started to turn in my brain, and I was like, right, there's always going to be a problem. Like, people are always going to find something to pick on you for, or to to pick on your appearance or whatever. So then I had a weird conflict where I had confidence in my abilities, and I was always really confident in my, like, going to school, university, everything. Like, I knew that I had the ability to do things, and I was confident in it. But then I wasn't confident in the way I looked. And then that was like a really weird conflict, because I had never really struggled with that until I got skinnier, which was odd because it's the opposite to what I thought would happen. And then started rugby at 15, literally fell in love with the sport from session one. And I just sort of, after a couple of months, I was like, I don't want to play football anymore, which was hard for me to tell my dad, bless him.
I never would have thought your dad was a football hooligan.
Absolute football hooligan.
Because I think your dad's a rugby commit till he dies.
Pause the story on the rugby progression, but he's a football hooligan. Like,
is he?
Yeah, like to the point where when I was
I
like
did not
8
know
years
that.
old, he took me on a bus to watch Swansea versus Leeds United, and it was my first experience of seeing first-hand football hooliganism. And there was like police and riot vans, and I was just like, what? Like, what? It was mad.
That's not what I see on TV.
So, exactly. Right. So that's the end of that story. Well, that's for another day. But yeah, started playing rugby, and I was like, Dad, I play rugby. And he was like, he's always been like very supportive of me. So he was like, not a problem. He drove me all over the country, to different countries, came abroad. Like, he's not missed a tournament abroad or anything like that.
He even came to watch, didn't he? When you got injured, he even came to watch us still, even though you weren't playing in the games, didn't he?
Yeah, so I'm like so fortunate to have him. To, like, he's not just my biggest fan, but whoever is involved in me, my team, anything, he is their biggest fan. Like, and he just travels around the world, like, basically spending the money that he makes in his business, and just spends on it coming to watch us, which is, I mean, he's living the life. All the parents live the life, don't they? But yes, so that's how I got into rugby, and gradually over sort of last 8 years, my image on myself and my body image has very slowly but surely improved because of my involvement within rugby, and because of being able to go to the gym and be taught how my body moves and why it needs to be the way it is to be able to perform on the rugby pitch. And it's crazy looking back. I like looking back at pictures when I first started rugby. I was about 52 kilos.
That is nuts.
Yeah, and I started off and they put me on the wing because I was tiny, and then I was a bit nuts. I was like running around the place, like just trying to tackle everything, and they were like, maybe she be a back rower. I was literally tiny. Like, how I didn't break then. I always think back, I'm like, how did I break then? I didn't break then, and then I put on 40 kilos and I'm stronger, but I break now. But yeah, and it is mad. Like 40 kilos. Like, that's a small human. A small human on me. Like,
I think you can say 40 kilos, but I think the difference is you doing it for a purpose, wasn't it? Like, you're full-time now, you're a full-time athlete, the type of position you play, like, needs to fit a certain spec of, like, okay, you need to be strong enough to do X, Y, and Z. So, you're doing it for a purpose, really, aren't you?
Yeah, and I was always so scared to put on weight. Like, weight controlled my life. Like,
100%. I can resonate with that, to be fair, because I'm how you are with your body image now, and how, like, you're like confident with, like, you're happy and comfortable in your own skin. I'm not there yet, and that's one thing I look and I'm like, I want to get to that place. I don't know how to get there, but
I don't know how I got
literally it. I think it is, and I think it's just a female thing in general. Is that, like, like, I look at the scales and I'm like, oh god, I want to get above that number.
Yeah.
Like, oh gosh, I want to be heavy. Like, for my position, stereotypically quite small, and then I'm coming in with, like, big legs and big shoulders, and I'm like, oh god, I don't want to be this big back. So if we ask people who don't know me, like, what position do you think I am, I get hooker,
really,
back rower, or a centre, and I'm like, no, I'm none of those.
Everyone just guesses second row for me.
I open my mouth and everyone's like, okay,
oh,
yours come out.
But
yeah, no, like, oh, gosh, it's one thing that I've always struggled with, is, like, how I look and how I feel, and I could be, like, 7 kilos different and I'm if I'm even 7 kilos lighter, I'm still don't see the
See it.
difference.
That's one thing that actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I remember there being there was a picture that I took during lockdown, just when lockdown lifted, and I was probably about 73 kilos, which is very,
That's lighter than me now, Gwen.
yeah, so it's like very lean. In lockdown, I was training a lot, you know.
To be fair, lockdown was the
nutrition,
leanest I'd
all that,
ever been.
yeah.
I actually had
But we didn't
form
have to
of
think
abs.
about
I
we didn't have
actually
to think
had
about playing
abs.
rugby, did we?
No,
Which
I was training all the time. I was getting
yeah.
like 20,000+ steps in.
Exactly.
Training probably 2 or 3 times a day, like crazy.
So-
I was so tight on what I was eating.
Yeah.
Like,
It's at the time.
yeah, like a little tiny little ice cream like this
Yeah.
big was like a cheat.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I know. So I took my ex-boyfriend. We went to the beach and he took a picture of me, and I remember looking at it being like, I can't post that. Like, I've got a roll of fat there, and I genuinely made me really upset seeing that picture. And then about 6 months later, rugby season started back up. I put on about 6 kilos or so over that time, because I needed to for my position. And I looked back at that picture and I was like, oh my God, that is the shape of my life. And it blew my mind.
Crazy, isn't it?
Blew my mind, because I literally remember going back to that day thinking, I look awful, I can't post that. So I posted that picture on that day on Instagram, and I said, here's a picture of me 6 months ago. On that day, I thought I looked horrific and I could not post this picture. I'm now posting this picture to tell you all that you don't appreciate your bodies for what they look like right now.
100%. Like, I just feel like you're never going to be happy. Like, that is 100% me. So now, obviously, post 2 surgeries and however much months I'm in my rehab process, I've put on some weight, which I'm very well aware of. And, like, I just think back to, like 8 kilos ago? Like,
as if you're talking about time like that. Yeah, there was a
like,
time 8 kilos ago
where I like
where I had an
used to
ab.
be one tiny one like on the side, but like I used to think, look at them and be like, oh gosh, I'm fat. Oh gosh, I'm uncomfortable. Oh, I can't post a picture of my sports bra because I look big or whatever. And I look back to those pictures and I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah,
my waist.
exactly.
And I just think that, like, don't get me wrong, I've always struggled with that. I've always felt uncomfortable with how I look and stuff. And like, before being in this performance environment, like you, I was so small. Like, in my age grade stuff, I literally was tiny before really got into the gym and my quad started to grow. But like, so I've always kind of felt really uncomfortable with it. But I look back now and I'm like, oh my God, why wasn't I happy with that? Like, I just feel like why can't we be like, yeah, what?
It's
like, what needs to change in that sense to be like, oh, there's nothing wrong with us, we're fine.
Yeah, for me, it was the goalposts are always going to move mentality, right? So I'll be happy when I am
definitely
60 kilos. I'll be happy when I look in the mirror and I can see a 6-pack or
I
some
can
abs.
fit into a size 8 jeans,
exactly, right?
or whatever.
But you get there. So say this example, right? Say you're 65 kilos. I'll be happy when I'm 60 kilos. Okay, so you lose 5 kilos and then you go,
still not happy. You want to lose 2
I've
more.
just got that little bit of So what I've realised now is that I don't have I'll be happy when, and injuries are a big thing in this as well, because the amount of time that I wasted with my other ACL when I was 17, I wasted a whole year because I was going, I'll be happy when I play again. And then I realised I've just lost 11 months of my life, and I was sad. I actually found a picture the other day. It came up like on our memories, and it was like 4 months post-op on my other knee. And I was like, it was just a picture of me crying. I remember taking that picture, being like, I'm going to take this to like look back on. And I was like, I haven't actually cried. Like, I've not experienced that this time.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is down to I've not got I'll be happy when, because I'm happy right now. Because literally, it's the little things for me, see? It's the wake up in the morning. Oh, it's quiet in the house. That's nice. That makes me happy. Then go and make myself a coffee. Go and sit outside in the sun. Literally, I'm like, if nothing else goes to plan today, I'm content. Like, this is, and I think having those little things that make you happy and that allow you to like internalize the happiness. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with being like, I'm happy with how I look now. I would like to lose 2 kilos and look a bit lean, but you're doing it from a place of, I want to better myself, not I hate myself.
Yeah,
that's
and
the
like
difference.
like I won't be perfect until I am 2 kilos lighter
Because
or whatever.
perfectionism is a myth.
That's what she says all the time. No, I think that is pretty powerful, to be fair.
Yeah.
Like, that sort of mindset.
And don't get me wrong, right? It's not perfect all the time. Like,
Never is.
well, because perfectionism is a myth. But like there will be the odd day, and I actually notice it a lot with my hormone fluctuations with my cycle. Like, especially building up into my cycle if I'm a little bit more bloated, or I just feel a little bit more fatigued. I look in the mirror and I'm like, today's one of them days, kind of thing. But the way I get around that is I put a comfy top on, put something a little bit back, which I'm sure you can.
Yeah, and to be fair, that's why I feel like where I'm growing as a person now with my insecurities. Where like, yeah, my jeans don't fit since my 2 surgeries. My jeans don't fit, and I'm kind of like, I could have been like, which I would have been like a year ago. A year ago, me would have been like, oh my god, fat bitch.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? And I was like, hang on a minute, give yourself a goddamn break.
Yeah. Also,
right,
would you ever say that to your friend?
No, I wouldn't. If you said to me, your jeans don't fit,
Ffion, you fat bitch.
I'd be like, yeah, you're right, Gwen. can't even be insulted. That's actually quite true. But no, like a year ago, me would have been like, oh my gosh, that would have put me in a hole. And I found myself nearly going to be like, oh god, this is terrible. However, I was like, how can I make this scenario better? Just went.
What can you control?
I went and put on a baggy dress.
Exactly.
And then I was like, I got no jeans, but hopefully it doesn't rain because I'm going to be in a dress. But I was just thinking, like, that scenario of like, okay, this is just the scenario I'm in. Can't do anything about it. Only thing I can control is, okay, being more accountable what I eat and like being a bit more proactive in certain things. Can do that, but it's not a quick fix. So the quick fix for right now, okay, what's going to make me feel comfortable?
Yeah.
Well, something that actually fits me on.
Yeah.
But like, I think that's just a bigger picture thing, and like, especially with the rehab journey and like stuff like that, thinking, okay, something doesn't go to plan, which it never does when you're recovering from surgery. So no, but it's all about, okay, can't do anything about it, what can I do and what can I control? And that's definitely been what I've taken and learned a lot from throughout these last few months in just daily life. And like I said earlier, like, I've really realised that the only person it's going to affect if I'm feeling negative and crappy and moaning about everything is me. So
yeah. And I think people need to realise more that, like, you are the only person that is 100% going to be a consistent in your life for forever.
Yeah.
And like, it's weird because we give a lot of time and effort and energy into friends, into family, sometimes into strangers. I do that all the time. I'm too nice to people, I think. Like, I put so much like time and effort to help people, and then I think, hang on a minute, why do I not give that same level of care and thought to myself? Because I am the only person that is going to be there from the minute I'm born to the minute I die. That's it.
But I think that was something that really, again, was a mindset shift for me, really, because I'm a very 100% person. Like, you give me 10% as a friend, I give you 100. And I learned a lot about people when I really needed them the most, and that was a really difficult lesson. But then I was like, okay, I need to step back a bit. I need to kind of be a bit more like, do things for me and stop, like, not to stop giving to people, because that's one thing I love. I'm a giver. Get satisfaction from helping people and being there for people, but there's got to be a give. And I've learned that, especially when I was at a time where like I really needed people, the most important person that you can rely on is yourself. And I started to think, okay, being selfish in some respect when like you need to be is okay. And that was something that really didn't sit well with me. And I had to learn to be like, you need to do what's best for you.
Learn to say no.
That is huge. That's one thing I've learned, which again was very difficult. Learn to say no and learn that it's okay to put yourself first when you really need to. And these last few months I've really like taken a step back from a lot of things and really reevaluated, like, okay, what do I want?
What matters most?
What matters most? What do I value? And what do I value as what I need, and what do I need in my life to get me through these next few months? Because gosh, when you do look back, it's been blooming crazy.
Yeah, it is. And I think we're both definitely people pleasers. Like, it's in our DNA, literally.
More so,
okay,
you pleaser.
Maybe I'm a people pleaser.
I am more of a, like, I feel like I'm more of a, like, I want to look after people. Like, I'm like, I enjoy being thoughtful. Like, I like, I get satisfaction.
It's your love language.
It is, that is my love language. Yeah. I don't know. I just get satisfaction out of like going that 100% extra for someone. But I've learned that I can't do that all the time.
It's a tricky place to be, right? Because I'm the exact same. Like, I love showing people that I love and my friends, I would like go out of my way to get them a coffee or to do something about. But it's hard because not everyone's like that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing on them. It's just that they're different, right? But I used to be like, well, I bought you a coffee and you've never done anything for me. And it was like, I'm not doing it for you to do it back, but it would be nice. Do you know what I mean?
100%. And one thing that has again been a lesson these last few months is that like is that expectation in the sense of like, again, like you said, and that's the same for me. I don't do that for people to expect it in return. But then when you think about it, it made me realize that okay, not everyone thinks like you. So like, and like you can't expect people to think like you when they're not like that. That was hard for me because I'd be like, okay, well, I check in all the time, or I do X, Y, and Z, or like even give me a text, or and it makes me think like, all right, it's just people are different, and that's okay. And it needs you need to think about okay, am I like can I tolerate that, or am I gonna like just make an exception for that or not? And if you can't, well, all right. But that is what was one thing that did change my mindset a lot to be like, it's okay that people are different, but that just needs to make you think about okay, do you let them in or not? And like it's okay for you to take control over that, and it's okay if people don't add value to your life and to what you need and the things you're going through, then it's okay to like take control of that and like make decisions based on what's best for you. And that is really hard. Like that is a really hard thing to come to terms with. And like again, it is like yeah, that's quite overwhelming when you're going through something tough already. But I do think it's really powerful. And once like you really look back on it, I think, oh my gosh, I'm really grown as a person. Because a year ago, me wouldn't have done. I would have just tolerated the bullshit and carried on. But you realize, gosh, that makes me feel so much better. Like just like offloading things that need to be offloaded.
Yeah, and like injuries are hard, going through tough times is hard, but when it's one thing I in a similar way, like I like to look back at like, a year ago me, like how would they have dealt with this situation? Because it's very easy to just purely when like shit hits a fan essentially, and like whether that's you've lost your job, you've done this, that, and the other, you've gotten injured, you've lost your sense of identity. It's very easy to only look at like the physical metrics of success. So for us, that would be, you know, have you hit your scores on your isokinetic test for your hamstrings and your quads? Like it's very easy for people to just focus on the physical things. Like, are you progressing? But actually, far more so, we've grown as people, which even when rugby's over and we're not athletes anymore, the mindset thing is the thing that's going to stick with us. And do you know what I mean? Like,
I think that it's I think that's what I've taken from this more than anything. And like I never thought I'd be in a position where I can be like, God, I'm actually really proud of like how I feel like I've grown. And like some people might not see that, but I don't really care anymore.
And that's you celebrating your successes, which I'm proud
of
you for.
I don't really care because I know how I feel and I know how I used to feel about certain things and how to think about certain things. And like, you know, people, like I said earlier, people question me like, oh my gosh, how have you got through these? I'm like, I got through these last few months because of me. I got through these last few months because I knew, like, I learned how to cope with certain things and I knew I'd get through it. And there's bigger things and, like, you know, tougher things that people go through. And this is just what, a few months, a little bumps in the road. And, like, I've learned that, like, okay, how can I use this time instead of, you know, allowing myself to go into this little hole and feel sorry for myself. And again, like we said, a year ago me, gosh, I probably would have dealt with this a lot differently. But yeah, I've definitely appreciated how much it's allowed me to change my perspective and view on things and how it's allowed me to really grow, as a person.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most important reasons why we feel this podcast is so important, because we've seen the effect of growing as people, like the effect that growing as people has had on our outlook and mindset, and being able to have each other, and like we mentioned before, the other people that are going through similar things to us, having those conversations openly with each other allows you to bounce things back and forth and to actually learn, have that perspective on how different people see things, understand that people are different, because that's another thing that I've struggled with. I used to think that everyone should think like me and my opinion was the only way, but now I've come to realize that that's far from the truth. And actually being open to learning what other people think is probably going to benefit me. Life's a team sport, as Drew says. And I think being able to facilitate those types of conversations with guests on this podcast is, one, going to be great for us to further our learning and our development, but I'm intrigued to see how many people we can positively impact by being open and honest about these different subjects and showing, like you mentioned, that higher profile people or people that you deem to have a perfect lifestyle or to be living your dream actually literally could be going through the same things as you.
Yeah, and I just think that like going back to speaking about my endo, it was just a real reality check that like, people need to hear these stories. Like people need to hear that like they're not alone. And like I said, there's so many different topics and taboo subjects that really need to be spoken about. And like this podcast is a perfect opportunity to do that. And like I said at the beginning, if you can change one person's life, then why wouldn't you do that? And like the response I had from speaking out about my endo was life changing for me. And that's a big thing to say, but it was, because it really made me feel like I've got a duty and a responsibility to do something with this. And okay, this is just one story and one topic that needs to be spread awareness, and think for all the things that I think all the other people that we can help through this, which is why we've been really motivated to think, and we've been like kids at Christmas, like with the planning and the ideas.
How do you describe me? How do you describe me?
What?
When you tell me ideas, and then what do you
she's
describe
like
me as?
She's like a bottle of pop, right? You know when you shake a bottle of pop, you got the lid on, so it's like fizzing and it's like waiting to erupt, and you unscrew the top and it just explodes everywhere. That is Gwen. I feel like I have to really tone her down. Like, right, can you just calm down, please? You're getting too excited.
Got to slowly release the bottle.
Yes, that's me. I'm the slow release, and you're the like erupting. That's why we contrast each other. But yeah, I just think that this is going to be something really cool, and I really want it to be something that can be really useful and really helpful for people. Like, imagine being someone that is really struggling with something and they don't know who to turn to or don't know what to do. Like, to be able to give experiences and okay, this is what happened to me. This is how I dealt with it. These are the strategies that either helped me or didn't help me. This is what I struggled with. People can relate to that. This is where you can go and find certain things that like just being a helpful source.
Yeah, it's resources basically, and that bringing things to light in the sense that genuinely people might not know that people also go through the things that they're going through, which is exactly
how I felt. Yeah, and that's why I didn't want to share my story about my endo, because I didn't really realize it was a thing. I for so long that I was suffering, I didn't think that there was anything wrong with me, and I was a bit in denial because I didn't want people to think, oh, she's just making excuses. Yeah. And I spoke out about it, and oh my god! And another, like, again, like this podcast, like, it's crazy when you hear someone else share a story or someone says something that you can resonate with, or you're going through the same thing. You're like, oh my god,
me
same,
too.
and like it just makes you feel a little bit more normal
and validated.
Yeah,
I think, because
and
sometimes you go through things and you think, am I making this up?
Yeah, and like for the endo example, like so many women feel like that because they're not heard. Like so many people are going through this horrendous disease, horrendous pains, and no one's listening to them. And like I've realised that, gosh, this needs to be spoken about more. And like I said, like the things that we can speak about and connect with people by sharing so many amazing people's stories is going to be hopefully really, really powerful. And I just hope that we can help as many people as possible. A motto that I've got that is a screensaver on my phone is "Be who you needed when you were younger." And I hope that doing something like this is really like giving just like justification to that quote, because something that's really got me through some dark times and really motivated me to keep striving to be something that I knew that I needed.
Yeah, appreciate. I got nothing else to add. That was outstanding.
Well, I think we've just come to the end to our first podcast. Can you actually believe it? I didn't think we'd get this far.
Oh, nicely. Well, I did. Actually, no, I believed in us.
I did think we'd get this far, but it's crazy that
it's crazy that it's happening. Like, for context, this was an idea that Ffion came to me, I'm going to say 2 weeks ago.
No, three.
I don't know, mine, because time's gone. I don't know. It's just gone. Maybe 3 weeks ago.
It wasn't long anyway, guys.
This has been bubbling in Fion's head for a while. And when Ffion came to me with the idea, it literally just clicked. Like,
well, Gwen works, like, what would happen within 3 months? Gwen works within 3 days. Like, her mind doesn't shut off. So I'm trying to keep up with that speed.
Yeah.
Hence why this has happened faster.
You know, my head, my if I get ideas, I'm like, hey, this could happen.
What?
Hence this tattoo. This is what my
Zoom into that, please.
it's pretty, right? Yeah, and I just think like it just clicked, like,
Yeah.
and
Well, we were very nervous in Coffee Lab. We were having a coffee and a chocolate croissant beforehand. Our palms are very sweaty.
my palms haven't. It was like, and it's weird because we've not played for a while now. But I literally had game day
Yeah.
butterflies. I was like, hey, it's our game day, Ffion. We're doing this, like carb loading, and we're ready to go. Ready to go.
But yeah, no, I've loved it. Thanks
Yeah,
for
me.
being my co-host,
Oh,
and this is
thanks for
hopefully going to be
having
something
me.
extremely exciting. So do you want to explain? I can't take credit for this because this is Gwen's tradition that she wants to bring into the pod.
Okay, so
The ending tradition, isn't it? The
Yeah.
outro tradition.
the outro tradition. That was a mouthful. Outro tradition. Yes. So as I mentioned, I really enjoy listening to podcasts. So the fact that I'm actually sat here like this is making me very happy. But there is a closing tradition on the podcast, The Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett, which is one of my favorite podcasts. And he gets each guest to write a question for the next guest. And I really like that because I think it's really interesting. You get one person's question and then get another person's perspective on it. So we are going to lend said tradition.
Replicate it
exactly.
slight change.
Yes.
Alter it.
Yeah. Alter it. Would you like to continue to explain?
Well, what would you like to leave our next guest?
Okay. I actually don't know because we never finalised
Great.
this.
But at the end of the podcast, she doesn't even know what she wants to leave.
What do you just want me to say anything?
Well, what do you want to leave?
What question?
It's hard because you know what the next guest, who the next guest is.
I know.
Which in context, the guests won't know who are on next.
Yeah,
they
so
won't
just
know
be
who they're
writing
leaving
a
the question to, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, we're also going to write the
we
question.
can start. How about we start with the standard. What 3 pieces of advice would you give your younger self?
Yeah, I like that.
How does that sound?
One piece of advice. It's pretty hard because I think a lot of our guests will have a lot of life experience.
We've got this little scrapbook
that
we're going to be taking a Polaroid photo in, and then the guests can write the answers to, and then we've got a little keepsake of every guest we've got and each question, which would be really cool to be able to see all the different answers.
Yeah, so our next episode we'll have a guest. That'll be
how exciting!
I know that. I think that's when it really starts to get really real, because it's like
real life stuff.
Like for real. But yeah.
Thank you very much for listening.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time.
Okay, we're gonna have to learn to get better at this bye-bye thing. It's a work in progress.
In all seriousness, we really hope that you enjoyed the podcast. Hope we could help in any way we can. And like I said, the focus for us is just really normalising really difficult, honest conversations, and sharing things that need to be shared more. 100%. Thank you very much, Gwen Crab.
Thank you very much, Ffion Lewis.
And remember,
keep saying it how it is.
Peace out, people.